My name is Gavin Evans, and this is my review of the video game Heavy Rain. And this will be a spoiler-filled review, so if you haven't played it, go and play it, then come back and watch my review because I will be going in depth. And I've heard amazing things about this game forever, and I was always hesitant to play it just because I know this isn't my type of game. I don't like this kind of gameplay, but I heard this game had an amazing story, so I'm like, you know what? I'll try this game out, I'll try Beyond Two Souls out, and I'll try out Detroit Becoming Human. So this was the first one I was going to play, and I have to say, after playing it, I was absolutely correct. I think this is the most overrated game ever. Let's begin with what I did like. I do like some of the camera work here. It always makes it feel like the characters are being watched, and sometimes you're moving around and there's a split screen and you can see what someone else is doing, and I like those moments. There's one moment where you're in a vehicle upside down, and whatever it tells you to do, you have to do the opposite of. So if the arrow's pointing up, then you have to go down because the car's upside down. I like that element. And this game is very atmospheric. In almost every single scene in this game, it's raining outside, hence the title Heavy Rain. And because of that, it does bring a certain atmosphere to this game, which I did quite like. And that's where my positives end with this game. I was not a fan of it in any way whatsoever. While I was playing it, I was making a bunch of notes, and there's no specific order to these notes, so if this review seems a little messy, that's because it is a lot messy. So anyways, the first note I made was that the graphics are really bad. I know this game came out a while ago, but it does not hold up in any way, and there was this jumpy quality to it, and maybe this was just my playthrough, because I haven't heard anyone else complain about this, but there were just moments where, like, when it tells you the time and all that, where all those titles, all those words were just flashing on and off, like disappearing, reappearing, disappearing, reappearing. And maybe my game was glitched out, but that just gave me a headache after a while. There was a flashing quality to almost every scene, and I don't know if that was just me, but it made it very hard for me to focus on the game. The next thing I listed was it's a very nitpicky complaint. I'm not going to argue against that, but there's a scene early on where you're walking around the house and the wife is just like, honey, could you get me some plates from the living room? So I go to the living room where the TV was, and I couldn't find the freaking plates. And then she repeats herself, so then I go into the dining room, the room that you dine in, and I found the plates. So why would she tell me to go to the living room if the plates were in the dining room? Maybe that's a realistic portrayal of marriage, but that was one thing I noticed. And like I said at the very beginning of this review, I'm not a fan of this kind of gameplay. Like, when the game started and I was pushing all these buttons, I'm just like, is this all the game has to offer? And the answer is yes, that's all this game is. And it's just not even remotely fun. Sometimes they'll tell you to shake the controller like this, or do this, or do this, and I just felt so dumb playing it in front of the TV. Like, I don't understand why people like this kind of gameplay. There's nothing remotely fun about it. And there were so many times that it just drove me nuts. Like, there's a few moments where you have to press, like, L2, and then X, and then triangle, and then R1, and you're just, like, moving your fingers around on the controller like you're playing Twister. Or there's moments where you have to patch someone up who's injured, and you're just moving the analog stick very slowly, and if you move the slightest bit too fast, it restarts, and I'm just like, oh my god, like, this is not fun, like, this is driving me crazy. Like, I was ready to call crits right there, like, oh, not fun at all. But anyways, you're introduced to all these different characters. Ethan, he has a couple kids, he has a wife, happy life, and anyways, you go to the mall, and then you run into this clown, and you get a balloon for your son. And then it takes you 5 hours, I guess, to take out some change to pay the clown for the balloon. And then you use your son. And look, I'm sorry, I guess what happens in this fictional game is very sad, but I found it completely laughable. Like, the son, after you already caught up to your son and was just like, hey, you can't run off like that. The son decides to say, fuck you, Dad. He runs away from his dad as far away as possible. He gets lost in this giant crowd. He crosses a street until he realizes, I guess my dad isn't near me anymore. Like, no shit, you dumbass. Like, my goodness. Like, I know kids can be really stupid in real life, but there's a certain line that you cross where I just can't buy it anymore. Like, really? And then you're just pushing through this crowd, pressing X, yelling, Jason, 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 Jason. If I hear someone shout out Jason like that one more time, oh my goodness, I'm going to lose it. But anyways, your son finally finds you, and he's just like, oh, well, I guess I'm going to cross this busy street and get hit by a vehicle. So then he crosses that busy street and gets hit by a vehicle like the dumbass he is. And the father jumps in front of the vehicle, but the son still dies, and that's the beginning of the story. And I was just like, I know I'm supposed to be really sad right now, but I just found all of that to be incredibly stupid. And another thing I noticed is that the subtitles are consistently off. And maybe that's just a me problem, but whenever someone was saying something, the subtitles would be like 10 seconds too late. And it just drove me crazy after a little bit. Like, if you're gonna have subtitles, make sure they're on time. And anyways, just like I said, this gameplay I don't like. It takes you a while to realize what you're doing when you're in a room. Like, there's moments where you're just going into a room, you're pressing all the appropriate buttons, and then the story kicks in. And it just makes the game feel like it's consistently dragging. It's going on for far longer than it needs to, and I just hated that. You make your way to a motel, and, well, now you're playing as a different character, because you play as 4 different characters throughout the entire game, and you're playing as a female who's going to a motel, and there's just this creepy receptionist who's just like, for some reason, he reminded me of the kid from the Polar Express, but all grown up, and he's just like the biggest creep. Like, she's just like, oh, my pleasure, and then she walks away, and the guy's just like staring at her butt, and he's just like, ha 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 ha, the pleasure's all mine. Oh, it's so stupid. And anyways, you play as this guy named Scott Shelby, who's doing an investigation with this woman, and you're investigating this family called the Kramer family, and I don't know if it's just because he's seen too many Saw movies and anyone with the name John Kramer has to be under investigation, but I just saw that this entire storyline was absolutely awful. Like, why was he investigating these people? Why should I care about these people? They weren't set up or developed at all prior, and I just had zero investment in this storyline. And then anyways, you make your way to this party, because at first you're like, oh, no, you gotta stay in the vehicle. And she's like, no, where you go, I go. And then you make your way into the party, and then he's like, you stay here, I'm gonna go up there. And she's like, okay. Like 2 minutes later, what happened to where you go, I go? So dumb. There is a bathroom that you can walk into, and it really bothered me that next to the toilet, all the toilet paper rolls were completely empty. Who is ever hosting this party has to make sure that there's toilet paper by the toilet. Just party rule 101. But anyways, what else do I got? Well, I just find all the dialogue to be just awful, and it's always delivered in an incredibly wooden way, and I guess you're limited to the technology of the time this game came out in, but the point still stands. The dialogue is awful, and the delivery of it is just absolutely atrocious, and it never looks like anybody's actually saying the dialogue. It's just, lots of times, that's also out of sync, and it just took me out of it as well. I just, on a technical just looking at the technical aspects of this game, it's incredibly dated and it doesn't hold up in any way. And because of that, it consistently takes you out of it. Maybe this story could have been told in a more effective way. This is actually a game that I think should be made into a movie. I think you can take this story and tell it as a movie very well. But as a game, it's just limited to the technology available at that time, and at no point was it ever convincing. Well, now there's a part where you play as Ethan, and you go to this plant, and you have to cross through this tight space while there's glass on the floor of it. And I just thought this section was actually good. I'll give the game that. I'm just like, oh shit, like you're trapped in this section, so there's already a claustrophobic element to this moment, and now there's glass that you have to crawl on. Like, if this was a movie, that'd be pretty intense. That's a great idea. And I actually do have 2 more positives listed here. That the music by Norman Corbelli is actually pretty decent, and it adds to the atmosphere. And there are stakes. Like, there is a certain urgency to this story, which I did appreciate. It's so dumb though, because the main character Ethan consistently gets these clues to where his son is. And it's just so obvious what is the address that he's trying to get answered. Because once you get the R, I'm just like, oh, I bet you that's Theodore Roosevelt. And he's already got the numbers at a certain point. So the fact that he couldn't figure it out just shows how stupid he is. And then there's a moment where you're playing as Scott Shelby, you're at this typewriter store. Oh, maybe it's a clock store. I think it's actually a clock store. Clock and typewriter store? That seems like an odd combination. But anyways, you have to wipe out all your fingerprints at that area. And it's so dumb because he picks up the glass without any hands and then wipes off the fingerprints and then puts it down. Like, dude, like your fingerprints are still there. Oh my goodness. Also, whenever you're trying to walk around and say anything, it can be like you press X to say this thing, triangle to say this thing, but the words and what button you press are always moving around the screen to the point where you can't always tell what they're supposed to be saying. So I hated that element. And there's also this one moment where you go to this guy's house and he's about to torture you, but right when he's about to torture you, he's got the drill and then ding ding. Oh, a moment's at the door. He keeps getting interrupted. It's just laughable. But even that entire character, I don't get what was the point of. Like, he just added nothing to the story. We didn't need that entire section. And whenever this game tries to have this great action moment, I never found it to be fun. They're always way too long. It's just not fun to press buttons. There's one scene at a car lot which just goes on for far too long. And there's also this one moment where you're asked to make scrambled eggs. And you put the eggs in a frying pan, but he doesn't even make scrambled eggs. He makes like an omelet without folding it in half. Like, does he not know what scrambled eggs are? It's in the title. You have to scramble the eggs. Imbecile. And it was near that area, there was this massive glitch where I kept exiting out of the game and coming back to it a few different times. Like, that area kept glitching for me and I couldn't move ahead. Eventually it worked, but it took quite a long time. I also hate it whenever there's a button that appears on the screen and I never know if I have to keep tapping it or if I just have to hold it. The directions aren't clear enough. And then anyways, John Kramer comes back into the story of this game, but once again, who is he and why should I care? But anyways, then you go to this club and you gotta move through the dance floor, and I guess it's really realistic because it's a pain in the ass to move around. And like I said, it's realistic, but my goodness, it's not fun to play when you can barely get by a group of people. And now, okay, look, I gotta talk about something because I just found it to be incredibly odd. I don't like it when games like this are getting me to press X to undress the main character. Or press triangle to take off your bra. I don't like that. I just think it's a little weird. Like, isn't it? Like, I get that these are just video game characters, but I don't know. I don't like it. It's makes me feel very uncomfortable, especially because after that there was a sex scene and like you've got to press the buttons and make the characters kiss, and I'm sorry, it's freaking weird. No, this thing should not exist within video games. Like, absolutely not. It's just bizarre. No. I do not need to press X to have the two characters make out and to take off each other's shorts. No, I'm saying no to that. That never needs to happen in another game ever again. That's my statement on it. Anyways, there's also this romance between Ethan and Madison, and it just feels incredibly forced. Like, she sees him a couple of times before they start having a romance, but it just feels like she's helping him out. It doesn't feel like there's any potential for a romantic relationship. Then eventually you make your way to this hospital and you need to get some answers about who this family came from, John Shepard's family. You're talking to his mom, and like I said, this game drags everything out to a laughable degree. Because you're trying to get answers from his mom, but she has Alzheimer's, and when she eventually remembers what you need to know, she's just like, come here. She whispers it to the main character, so the player can't figure it out, and oh my goodness. And anyways, then you gotta play as this other dude to figure it out with his weird warball glasses, and I hated this moment as well because the game kept glitching here too. Like, I'm supposed to figure out who did it, and I couldn't. Like, I guess I'm supposed to find this receipt on the floor of this video, but it wasn't detecting it, so I had to press give up regarding this character there. Then I just hate the reveal. I hate it. I hate the fact that Scott Shelby is the villain. I do not buy it for a single second. It goes against everything that we've seen of that character up until that point. Whether it's him helping that woman who tried to kill herself, or just him being a good guy throughout, I just did not buy it. Like what? He killed that one guy at the clock store without the other girl realizing it? Like, it purposely goes against what we've seen, what we witnessed. So that's not clever, it's a complete betrayal of what's been set up. I hated that. I think it's an awful reveal. There's a moment where you have to pick a lock, which took me way too long to get going. The trick is to move it slowly and then fast when the camera angles change. But yes, that drove me crazy. Then you find a gun in the drawer. I guess you decide not to grab it, then Scott Shelby attacks you. And I'm gonna be honest, this is when I stopped playing the game because it glitched out. I could not continue. Because he locks you in this room, and you've got to pick up this radio thing and hit it against the wall. But I pressed Skrill, but the game wouldn't let me continue. And I kept trying. I shut down the game a few different times and tried again. I actually couldn't continue past this point. Now, I did watch the ending of the game online, all the different endings, and I hate when games have multiple endings because it just feels like a lack of commitment regarding a single ending. Like, I feel like stories need one ending. Like, I love the movie Clue, but my biggest issue with that movie is the fact that there's so many different endings. I don't need that. I know it comes with the territory involving this kind of game, but I didn't like it. So, I'm not even impressed by the story. I know that's the one element that everyone seems to praise regarding that game, and I do believe it could make a good movie. You know, you gotta make some changes, but I do think this story could make a good movie. But playing it just wasn't an ounce of fun. I hate this kind of gameplay. I think there's certain characters that had potential but aren't really delivered on. It's just the kind of story you see the potential in, but it just shouldn't have been a video game. And pressing buttons like that, it just isn't fun. This game's way too dragged out. I just hated it. So anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and give the game Heavy Rain a 2 out of 10. Okay, have you played Heavy Rain? What did you think about it? Let me know in the comments down below. Make sure you like, make sure you comment, make sure you subscribe. Stay tuned for some more videos soon, and Gavin